I suppose we can get started. Okay, I hereby call this special meeting to order. We discussed with Michael whether we should do the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, Michael. Any chance to say the Pledge of Allegiance? I support that. So now we have one item on our agenda, and the fun stuff about this item is it's an action item. So it's really cool and expect lots of action. Michael, would you be so kind as to run this discussion? And I believe you could begin this discussion with a motion. Would that be okay?
Yeah, I have multiple motions.
Oh, how exciting. The more motions, the better. I love when you make motions, Mike.
Okay, so hopefully, so there's multiple motions. I don't think any of these are going to be a surprise here. So the first motion is to the wording's a little bit different. The Christina Downey, who though not here, did help us with the wording of this. So number one, approve a request for an additional appropriation for fiscal year 2024 of $39,765,853 for construction funds for the Old Greenwich School renovation project, and ask the Board of Estimate and Taxation to release the conditions on the $1,806,000 in A&E funding in fiscal year 2024 budget. Second one.
Do I have a second for that motion? I see Kathleen would like to second that motion. So we have Michael's made the motion.
Misstated one of the numbers just slightly, Michael Joseph.
I'm gonna ask you if you could also repeat it, just because
Absolutely. So approve a request for an additional appropriation for fiscal year 2024 of $39,765,873. So again, $39,765,873 for construction funds for the Old Greenwich School renovation project, and ask the Board of Estimate and Taxation to release the conditions on the $1,086,000 in A&E funding in the fiscal year 2024 budget.
And Kathleen, you're still okay seconding that?
I am. I thought the number was 39,795,873. You said 765, but you might have a better number. So
I reversed the numbers. It's 39,795,873. Thank you.
yeah. Okay.
So your second stands.
Yes.
Okay, then we will bring this up for discussion. Mike, if you'll host or run the discussion, I appreciate it.
Yeah. So there are a couple of motions here, but that's enough to get us started here. There's been a process here, as everyone is well aware. I won't talk at length, but the process here that's gone back several years from a feasibility standpoint. 2 years ago to the A&E work this year that brings us to this point where they're asking for the release of construction or the approval of construction funds for the Old Greenwich project. In previous meetings, we brought to the board and our architects and building experts have brought to the board the potential designs for the project. And I'm excited to bring James Waters, who's chair of the Old Greenwich project, Old Greenwich Building Committee, back here to talk through where we've landed at this slightly revised number that we had from last week, as well as we'll be able to talk through the schematic design and suggested revisions to the ed specs. All of this is to put us in a position around the June 30 deadline, which we should also talk about whether that's a real deadline or not, to as far as making the state identified list, which is why we're having this conversation tonight, so that we are eligible for reimbursement next year. So all that said, let me turn it over to James Waters, who's going to walk us through the project.
Thank you, Mike. And everybody, thanks for scheduling this meeting and taking your time. As I just want to make sure you guys are aware who all these faces are, because they're all really important members of our team. So first and foremost, we have Jackie Welsh, who's the vice chair of the building committee and architect herself, and has really, helped me go through all the details on this project. So, at some point, I know she's going to stand in for me rather than you have to listen to me. Then from Silver Petroselli, we have David Stein and Dean Petroselli. They're responsible for the schematic design that we're prepared to present to you tonight, that has been approved by the building committee. Also Lawrence Rosati, who is from Morganti, our owner's rep for the project. And then you have Jeff Anderson and Ryan Patrick from Downs Construction Company, who is our construction manager at risk. So that's who these faces are, and we see them all the time, but I realize you may not. So I'm going to try and move this on, but let me just frame this before we turn it over to some of our project team. I am going to share my screen. And yes, that's the one I want to share. And can you guys see that on my screen? See my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, so you've seen that cover page before. The introduction here is, similar to what you saw last week. We are in a position to submit to the OSCGNR by June 30. Yesterday morning, the building committee unanimously approved 3 motions. They're as follows there. I believe those are part of the motions that, or related to the motions that Mike presented. So we approved the final schematic design report. We approved recommended modifications to the OGS ed specs, and we accepted the revised cost estimates as presented by Downs. Tonight, the project team is going to walk you through our final schematic design, our recommended ed spec modifications, and the revised estimates. All those materials were provided in advance, and I recognize there are a lot of detail. So that's why we have them here our team here to help answer some of those questions. We will need all 3, plus funding approval from the BET and the RTM to meet the June 30 deadline. And the last thing I would just say is, as Mike alluded to, this is the next step in what's been a multi-year effort that really began in 2018 when the board determined that Old Greenwich School was going to be a high priority renovation project for the town. So,
and James, if I can just interrupt you for a moment, that is also why we'll be bringing forward 4 motions today to also discuss possibly voting on the ed specifications and the schematic design, so we can set and a cost estimate so that we can set everything up as fast as possible.
great. Thank you, Mike. Okay, so your favorite slide, you guys have seen this a few times now. I will point you, the only thing that has changed here is on the Downs estimate. Downs over the last week in partnership with the building committee did revise their cost estimate. We had we promised you last week that we would do a value engineering session. We did so, and that brought the cost of the project down to $41,881,873. That is for option A. Recognize you have been provided with estimates that show a couple other options, option B and option C. Silver Petroselli will be prepared to walk you through any questions you may have on the differences. And then, also in the more detailed estimate page that was provided, you'll see some alternates. And we did this in response to feedback that we received from Board of Ed members, but also BET members that said, well, hey, if we move forward on this project, what are some out years projects that may need to get done? And I recognize the town does not want to kind of keep pouring money into one school. We've got a lot of work to do around the town. And, we wanted to just flag some of those as all potential alternates that you might consider. The main things I would say is you'll see that the cost of this project is estimated at $524 a square foot. For renovation projects, that is right down the fairway based on comparable projects across the state of Connecticut. In fact, Downs and some of our project team are involved in other projects, renovations as well, where the project cost is in excess of $800 a square foot for renovations, right? So we're proposing $524. As you all know, your ed specs do not call for a renovate as new project. It calls for an alteration. So we are not touching every aspect of the school. That's why we're able to keep the cost relatively low on a dollar per square foot basis. The box on the bottom right there, you'll see, there are some differences where you have the 6,216,000. That is a difference from the estimates that you guys, we brought to you in March prior to actually doing schematic design, prior to doing all the investigative work in the building, prior to hiring a professional estimator for this project. And we'll be prepared tonight to get into some of the details on what that is. I think I'm just going to say it right up at the top. There are two really big items that have led to increased scope, and then one that is, a third that is directly related to the achievement of the ed specs. So those two are hazardous material abatement, where a very, very small number was carried in the original ed specs. That number is materially higher. It must be done if you intend to touch this school. And phasing costs. There was no allocation in the ed spec for phasing costs, although it did allude to the fact that you wanted to make sure the school could be occupied during the renovation. Our project team is confident in their abilities to do this and keep the kids safe and get the project moving forward rather than let it drag on for years and years and years. They do this all the time, but there is a cost associated with that. You got to clean up, you got to set containments around areas. You got to clean it up down. We'll be prepared to talk about some of that. And then the final thing, is, frankly, some of the, and this is covered in some of the adjustments in the ed specs, some of the costs, the scope anticipated in the ed specs. Two big examples I just want to, flag. One is ADA compliance. We recognize, that it's really important to this board that we make sure this building is ADA compliant, particularly with the Office for Civil Rights complaint filed in 2021 and the subsequent resolution agreement, which requires us to bring it to 2010 ADA standards. I think in our assessment, after doing all the diligence, and SPNA will get into this, there is some additional ADA work that must be done on this building versus what's proposed in the ed specs. And the second thing is on HVAC systems. The ed specs called for a building-wide HVAC system. However, when we really looked at the ed specs, it looked like approximately 25% of the building was not going to receive HVAC. And based on the advice of our architect and construction manager, we really should be making the building fully HVAC, not just leaving a quarter of it undone. So that accounts for a lot of this. I'm not going to spend too much more time on this. You'll get more, detailed input from our professionals. Lawrence, I'd like to turn this over to Lawrence, who's just, you've seen this before, but, I think Lawrence can walk you through kind of where we are in the schedule and reiterate our, game plan to get construction started next summer.
Thank you, James. As I mentioned last week at the meeting, the call at the top third from schematic design phase down to the design document phase is where the team has been at since February when I first joined the committee. As I mentioned before, there's been a lot of work done. There's been weekly meeting minutes, design team meetings, principals meetings, discussions with planning and zoning to go forward. And even beginning talks with the building department and the fire department. With the successful motions passed tonight, we'll then proceed on to the design phase. This is a high level schedule of approximately 4 months, culminating in a design document review. And again, at the end of that phase, we'll be doing a budget for the design documents, reconciling a budget, bringing it to the committee. Again, that effort with the construction document phase will happen again. Along the way, we'll have a DDR submission in the design document phase and a PCR submission in the construction document phase to allow us to go out to bid. And the bottom 2 rows are the potential fiscal year construction starts, as James mentioned. So again, I want to say that there's been a tremendous amount of effort to date, and the plan forward is as you see it in these bar charts.
Great, thank you, Lawrence. And I think with that, I'm going to just stop sharing my screen and ask that if it's okay with Mike, that we turn the meeting over to Silver Petroselli, who, I think is prepared to, guys, I can share the screen again with your schematic designer, you can.
I'm queued up, ready to go. So if it's okay, I'll share, I will share the PDF that I have in place. So, let me go ahead and get that going.
Guys, one thing before David starts, I just wanted to reiterate, I've said this before, but this project team that the building committee has assembled is literally been tailor-made to do this project, right? We picked people who do this type of work and who have extensive track records. And, and I just wanted to reiterate, this is who the building committee really challenged these guys. We hauled Lawrence back for a second interview. We spent our time picking the right team. So with that, David, go ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for putting your trust in us. So I have in front of you a 152-page document that I know was presented to you already. And the intent tonight is not an attempt to kind of go through the pages. I'm going to sort of scroll through these as I go, but I'm going to start with probably the most important piece and more talk to that than some of the individual written words. But the next page that we have here is our table of contents, and the way that we assembled this report, I want to just quickly go through the overall intent on this project, starting with what you see here is the civil and the landscape. Our site is situated in a FEMA floodplain, which our base flood elevation is elevation 13.
I just see the table of contents. I don't know if you need to scroll.
Can you see could you not see my screen?
Oh, we can see it at just the table of contents. You were talking about a design.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he's intending just to show the TOC.
Yeah, and I will get to the design in a minute. I just would like to, if I can, just quickly walk through, Karen, if it's okay, just each one of these. So starting and looking at the civil and the landscape design, because we're within the floodplain, we knew that our addition needed to be elevated above that. So that will be positioned at elevation 14. We also recognize that there are some flooding issues that take place. There is also some sanitary backup and storm drainage backup that happens, throughout the year at various storm situations. Through our due diligence, we've discovered, and it's very common of buildings of this age, that the storm system and the sanitary system are actually woven together, and they all connect and discharge at the same point. Our attempt is to continue to explore that and fix those issues and separate those out. ADA being a prominent piece of this entire project also requires us to look at the site, not just within the building. So we are continually exploring as we're reworking, making sure we could get accessible parking as close to our new primary front entryway as possible. And as you saw from our design, and we'll go back, we will show you those renderings again of our proposed solution, which is to reorient the primary entryway to the school and create a secure entry vestibule by redoing the plaza and actually lowering the plaza to its base original floor elevation and creating now a primary universal accessible entryway to the building. That is a different concept than what was articulated in the original ed specs. And now the committee, based on our approval yesterday, endorsed that design. On the architectural piece, as James mentioned, we are doing an alteration. We are not doing a full renovated new project which we would be touching every component of the building. Within our narrative, we begin to break down each of those things, starting with the roof. So for an example, we are doing portions of the roof that will need to be replaced, although the district has done some roof replacement in recent years. And because of that, we're going to keep those in place, but we will be replacing the older roofs so we can maximize the reimbursement as part of this project. In terms of the windows, there was many discussions, and that has been revised within the ed spec that we'll get to, is that we are not replacing all of the windows throughout the building. There are some areas where we will be touching that there may be some adjustments, but we are not doing a full replacement. Most of our work on the inside is related to ADA accessibility, related to creating new ramps and access ways, adjusting stairways, modifying the bathrooms, modifying handrails. And some of those items were not fully identified or contemplated in the original feasibility study. It was a feasibility study, so they were looking at a much more higher level. Our team got into the building. We measured every door opening, and our goal is to make this facility fully ADA accessible, which essentially means that we are at least each primary space throughout the building will be accessible. So for example, there will be a classroom that will be fully accessible. There will be access to those primary spaces that will be done throughout the overall project. There is structural work that's as part of what we're doing is we're trying to now insert new mechanical systems into this building that has a variety of different construction that we now need some structural improvements to do that, in addition to the 4 classroom addition that we are providing. The mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection is a bulk of the work that we're doing. And you saw from James's prior slide, that was something that was not fully contemplated in the original feasibility study. It spoke about doing in certain areas, but if you are going to be changing out the primary system and try to meet the intent of today's energy code, you should be air conditioning and ventilating and providing a much better educational space for the students and the educators. So we are inserting a brand new mechanical system. The intent is to make that as energy efficient as possible and go primarily to an electrified system with some backup of a boiler system to sort of circumvent some of that. Another portion is to now protect your asset and put a fully sprinklered system within your building. It is required as part of state statutes that our buildings are fully sprinklered if we're embarking on projects of this scale. So we are doing that. And then because of all the air conditioning, we are going to be fully redoing the electrical system and upgrading its capacity, providing some emergency backup in areas that we need to do, such as sewage ejector pumps and other areas, and for emergency fire alarm and so forth. So I just wanted to break down within this table of contents. A lot of what's here is written word, and I know it's kind of difficult to present, especially on a Zoom screen or even in a, even in sort of a public forum. But I'd like to go, if I can, just to the drawings that we have in place, and any changes that we have made from what you have previously seen are very minor in terms of aligning with the ed spec that I will get to in a minute. So I just need to bring up that slide so I can forward.
David, while you do that, just
Yes.
one thing I want to just make sure, you reiterate for the Board of Ed is, my understanding as we've talked about it is that we are replacing the most essential systems in the building to bring them up to code, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, et cetera, along with ADA compliance. There, of course, will be ongoing maintenance, scheduled maintenance, as there would be for any other building. But can you just give a little bit of commentary on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'm gonna I'll get to the site plan and then I'll turn it over to Dean to walk you through the design piece. So yes, we are essentially touching all of the systems that are in place, although there are certain areas or components that we may keep in place. There's going to be a new head-end electrical system. There will be new mechanical units. There is going to be new ductwork that's brought into the system, but there are certain areas, millwork. We're not touching every flooring area. We're not touching every trim within the building. So with that, there is going to be still ongoing maintenance within that. It's still a very safe building, and I think we talked at the last meeting related to even the abatement piece of it, that we are doing a considerable amount of abatement work that is related to our HVAC work, but we are not chasing every material, but back to its sort of raw material. So with that, as James mentioned, yes, we are touching a significant amount of this building, but there will be other areas that will still be within an aging point that over time you're going to put within your capital planning and manage moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I just wanted to show what we have here in terms of the site plan and just orientation to Sound Beach Avenue. What we're showing in the darker circles are the existing trees, very mature trees that are sort of located and line that street. And then we're going to be sort of balancing in some other vegetation around our new plaza that Dean will quickly talk about, related to now our primary entryway. If you recall, the previous feasibility study contemplated sort of entering in on this loggia area that's located over here. We felt it was really important to sort of center it, honor the original architecture, remove those stairs. And so we're really doing two things. We're reorienting the primary entryway. We're maximizing and improving the entry plaza, and we have a secure entry that is fully accessible to the building. Our addition has been downsized. So as part of when we get to the ed spec, we've shaved about 1,600 square feet from the original feasibility, as we've made that more compact. But we still have the primary 4 kindergarten classrooms that are located here. This gives us an opportunity to create a courtyard, and with some really delicate design, create kind of a sensory garden with the choice of materials and pathways to make this courtyard become functional, usable, and an educational space. We do need to reorient some of the play spaces, and the playground has been removed out of our project for budget reasons, but also because it was already on the town's capital plan to do a new playground in 2027. So it made sense to have that done as a separate project to help us with our overall budget. We are very cognizant of our neighbors that are positioned here, and you'll see by the architecture, we purposely scaled that down to be more in line with having those neighbors that close to us. So we tried to make this as compact and simple as possible. So with that, Dean, I'll tee it up to you and I'll kind of go from page to page for you.
Yeah, good afternoon, folks, or good evening, I guess, at 6:03. So yeah, you folks, I won't go into a lot of detail, but as Dave said, in blue, we're putting in a pre-K or a K classroom, the pre-K on the left side. So the 4 classrooms in blue are kindergarten classrooms, which made sense to put them in the addition because they're larger than your existing classrooms at about 800 square feet. The Ks are at about 1,000 square feet. So it's a 1-story addition. As Dave said, it's very complimentary and sensitive to the neighbors. So what you see in blue is the proposed addition. What you see in the light red is what we're calling significant interior renovations. We do hit almost every square inch of the building with some sort of effort, if it's just mechanical lighting, ceiling. But as Dave said, a lot of ADA compliance throughout the building. But what you're seeing in red is really what we call significant, starting on the right side of creating that science lab that currently doesn't exist in that location. Right down the middle, relocating the admin offices from the floor above down to the lowermost level, along with nurse, creating that new front entry lobby right off the, right on access to the exterior plaza. On the left side where it says first grade classroom speech, that is currently a lowered space down about 3 steps, and we are proposing to infill that floor area to bring it up to the same level as the corridor network. So again, solving an ADA issue there by infilling that portion. All the room names along the front of the building have virtually changed. We're jockeying around where the grades are. We're first grade, second grade, all the way through to the uppermost floor. So there's a reorientation of all of the spaces. And lastly, a new elevator in that location where it's shown there. We needed an elevator that hits all 3 levels without compromising or giving up a lot of square footage and without disrupting a lot of existing space. Obviously, it made sense to put it in that location. So again, what you're seeing in red is the really heavy work. What you're seeing in white is again going to be touched, but not at the same level as the red or the blue is. Again, going up to the mid-level, we've relocated classrooms. We've relocated many of the offices. Probably one really important feature because of the low headroom, we are proposing to lose the floor between the first and second floors so that we have a 2-story lobby that's created, a 2-story entry lobby. So we are removing that floor section, and there'll be a railing across the corridor looking down into that 2-story space from this mid-level. Again, you'll see the elevator, significant renovations in the toilets, but most of this is minor alterations, and obviously the HVAC between the mechanical and the fire protection that really affects a lot of the building. Going up to the uppermost level, you can see there's even less significant work on this level, but again, all the spaces are going to be touched throughout this renovation. We did produce, and again, I'm kind of giving you the 30,000 foot. We produced a lot of images and looked at a lot of designs, even though we're at schematics and there's still going to be opportunity at DD to embellish this. The concept needed to work so that the estimators and the construction managers at least had a good understanding of what we're proposing to do. As Dave alluded, we need to keep elevation 14. That's a critical elevation in terms of the floodplain. So we're setting that front door at elevation 14. But what's drastic with this proposal is losing the stair that brings you up to the mid-level of the building. We felt strong from an ADA and an OCR standpoint. ADA always states that you should make all attempts to make your front door accessible. And we felt that making the front door accessible was the right solution to this building. We're still going to be looking at different design options, but the concept is that we're going to have a secure blast and ballistic vestibule that's required by the state for any project that's funded. And we move that entry from the mid-level down to this lower level and allow everybody to be able to enter this building from an ADA standpoint and from an ambulatory standpoint. We are rebuilding or recreating the courtyard with some retaining walls and some stairwells. We do have different grades that we need to meet. You'll see just off to the right of the rendering, we have an existing staircase that we have to hit certain elevations. So it was complex to get these elevations to work, but generally what you're seeing is what we are proposing to move forward with a revised front plaza, a new front secure vestibule that provides ADA and OCR compliance. The back classroom addition, as we alluded, it's a 1-story kindergarten classrooms. We chose to put on sloped roofs to really mimic what the building has, but also pay homage to the adjacent neighbors, which are lower scale, obviously residences. So we looked at various designs, but ultimately the building committee chose to move ahead with this solution, looking at a brick facade building, curtain wall and storefront windows, and asphalt shingle roof with fascias to really mimic or match the scale and appearance of the existing building. And just different views as we walk around that for classroom addition.
Yeah, that's correct. So that pretty much completes the piece of the schematic design, James. If there's any questions, we can answer that or go right to, I'll stop share and then bring up the ed spec to go through those revisions.
Mike, do you want us to pause there for any questions on schematic design?
It might, my preference, it might make more sense to just have one discussion, because knowing how we operate, if we pause, we'll end up having 3 lengthy discussions instead of one.
Okay.
Very good.
David, while you're pulling up the ed specs, it might make sense. So for everyone watching and at home and whatnot, to give a sense here. So obviously, so we had the feasibility done a while ago, but in between feasibility and this design, we had the OCR settlement. So the reason why David brings up the ed specs, the reason why we have some changes to the ed specs is really to make sure that the design of the building meets the requirements in the OCR settlement, which required a few tweaks, actually not that major tweaks. One of the big one, what David already mentioned, being the change to the front entrance. Instead of slapping a new accessible front entrance somewhere, a new accessible main entrance onto the building, we thought it was much more important to make the current entrance accessible.
Mike,
But I'll turn it back to David. Mhm.
Yeah, Mike, if I could
Oh,
just really,
May I just jump in 1 second? Mike, might it be better to address each of these motions? Because the ed specs is a separate motion. So shouldn't we complete the discussion on the motion and take the vote and then move off to the next one? Would you think that might be better, or you want to continue with having a dialogue about all of them and then jumping back? So I think procedurally we have to talk about just the motions.
Well, that's fair. So if that's the case, we have to go to Jeff to talk through the numbers. And the numbers might make more sense if we touch on the ed specs, like real very briefly, in all honesty.
That falls into the category. Then I believe Karen has a question. Karen Hirsch.
Oh, no, it wasn't a question. It was just, I understand where you were coming from, but I was going to say, second what Michael Joseph was saying, and as well as we have to approve them at some point in order to have them submitted to the state. They also have to have our minutes saying we've approved them.
Well, since they're tied in, then I'll leave
That's
you to
just-
it, Michael. Sorry to interrupt, but go ahead, Mike.
All right.
Thank you, Karen.
So go ahead, David. Do you have the ed specs? There you go.
I do. So ready
Yeah.
to go. So as you may recall, this was approved in October 21st, 2021. We have taken that same document that was there, and we've done edits along with it, and you can see you will be able to see the subtleties. So I'm going to move through that for you and begin to show you what has been edited, because it will show up, and I will zoom into the areas for you so you can begin to see. As I mentioned, the original design had 9,630 square foot of a 1-story addition. As we came on board, we looked at that and we knew we would be able to find some ways to sort of consolidate and be more efficient with that. And we're changing that to approximately 7,300 square feet. The reason why we're noting approximately, we're still in schematic design. Things change as we start sizing our structure and making some adjustments. So it's always noted as an approximate within an ed spec that you don't want to be tied to a specific number anyway. So that's a sort of a nuance when you're going through that. We also wanted to identify that we're creating a new secure ADA accessible at the main entry at the front plaza. There was language previously that mentioned that that was going to be sort of offset and tied into what was described as the loggia. So that is what you see in blue, and then what you see in red, we just made those additional changes. We're also talking about, there was never language that specifically mentioned the fully compliant fire protection system. And we also pointed out, because there was mention that we're doing full window replacement, but then there was some contrary information that talked about only 10%. We wanted to sort of clarify that we are doing some work. We're not doing a full window replacement, and we're doing selective roof replacement, as I mentioned, because you do have some roofs that the district replaced just a few years back. So there makes no sense. And we've looked at these roofs and we've evaluated them during our initial investigation that they are in place. The total project budget is still shown here, although your budget will be approved along with that to keep that in place. I'll just continue to scroll through to get to the point which will come up where there's very minor edits, but I think it's important just to show you where we are. We are also mentioning the kindergarten, because it said kindergarten or first classroom as part of the one grade level within the fourth section. That was not included in the original plan, and it ties into your ed specs that were prepared as part of this project. We also are noting that we have a fourth kindergarten classroom, not 3 that was originally noted. And you see that that's part of the new addition that we presented to you. Oop, I think I skipped a page. My apologies. There was also intended to be major renovations to the multipurpose room. We've evaluated that. There's still obviously mechanical, electrical, plumbing and fire protection that'll be part of that, but we reoriented that because of our reconfiguration and the ADA improvements. So we've crossed.
David, before you scroll, there's actually above that, there's one more.
Oh, did I skip? Thank you, James.
The first grade one.
Oh, okay.
It's the same number of classrooms in the addition. It's just, we're calling them 4 kindergarten.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Okay. Let me see if I could scroll through better. Maybe this is an easier way to do it than through my mouse. We're also just clarifying that main entryway. So we are, we want to be redundant because it's important. The auditors will look at these ed specs when they're doing their final audit, and we want to make sure that our primary entryway is articulated correctly, that it is going to be a new secure entryway. It's going to be an accessible main entry, and it's on the ground level. So we have detailed that within this. And that's sort of the completion of that, the plaza. Let me move down. We're also talking about the main office, because now we are sort of repositioning the main office to be directly adjacent to the primary entryway. This is a similar concept that you have at the new high school project, and is part of the state security guidelines that mandate that your primary entry is directly adjacent and tethered to that. We also just mentioned some alternates of some new windows potentially around that main entryway and nurse area, and some larger masonry openings that we would be doing. So we wanted to sort of clarify the extent of the window work that is part of the project. Just in general, we also mentioned that nurses suite that is on the opposite side of the entry lobby and its general square footage. And to reiterate, windows again. And I think there's might be one more that I had here, but nope, I think that pretty much.
If you go down one more page, there's on 24, there's something.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Or
So
25.
as Dean described to you, as part of our ADA improvement, we are proposing an infill to that lowest classroom area and corridor to raise it so it is flush with the original 1902 corridor. Okay, so that's solving a significant issue, has a cost impact to do so. But there is, as you know, if you walk through the school, there's many ups and downs, and it's really problematic to solve without making it flush. So this is really the best solution for that, as opposed to trying, ramps are impractical, small lifts are really impractical to make that work. And again, sort of clarifying roof and window replacement and keeping that consistent through the original ed specs that you reviewed. And then lastly, again, removing that sort of kindergarten ed, special ed location and entryway that was sort of situated to the right, and clarifying that we're at floodplain elevation 14, which is, you know, critical to the overall project. Getting rid of that language that addressed the accessibility entryway in our other location, and then clarifying where we're coming through and working through that sort of ramp in the 1950s edition. And crossing out any other language associated with that. And we're coming to the end where it just deals with the site improvements of the front plaza and removing the main entry stairs that are there. And then we get into the budget. Now, within this report, this still had the original plans that you could cross-reference, but our new schematic design supersedes that as part of the building committee's approval and your review. So now I do think I got to the end of those red lines, and I can keep this up, or I think you're probably getting to a point that
David, one thing I just wanted to just clarify from our perspective, a lot of the changes to the ed specs is obviously to make it consistent with schematic design. And, you know, I think you explained to the building committee that a lot of this is really important for state reimbursement, so that when we go to get reimbursed for some of this, if we're not consistent with the ed spec, that can present a problem for us in terms of state reimbursement. Is that right?
That is correct. So, and we're going to be providing them with, providing them with that accounting sheet that James showed of the original budget, how it matured and where we are to date.
Mike, over to you.
Yeah.
Let's keep the train running here. The Jeff, it probably makes sense to talk about the numbers here.
Great.
Sure, thank you. Ryan from my office is on the call. We're just going to give him the opportunity to share what has already been distributed to everybody on the board in anticipation of this meeting. I'll try to just recap a little bit our efforts over the last month, at the risk of repeating myself potentially from what I had talked about last week in person. But you know, our effort over the last month has been multifaceted. We're trying to interpret a budget done in 2021 as part of the ed specs, a really conceptual budget with obviously much less information than has been developed at this point by your architect, Silver Petroselli. We're trying to interpret those drawings, obviously with that more detail, that more information that we need to provide a comprehensive budget. We have to take into account the fact that the project needs to, or the building itself needs to remain occupied throughout construction. So we're incorporating phasing. And last but not least, we're incorporating our thorough understanding of the K through 12 construction market here in the state of Connecticut, certainly in the recent past, to provide you with an opinion of cost, a budget that in turn has been reconciled with another third-party estimator hired independently by Silver Petroselli Associates. So with that being said, after we left the last meeting, and as James highlighted at the beginning of our meeting tonight, we embarked upon a further investigation into the drawings and specifications in the building itself to try to fine-tune this estimate, provide more cost management solutions, knowing that we are in excess of the desired budget to accomplish this building. So our effort has in fact found a significant amount of additional cost management opportunities that we've realized now to show you a total estimated cost, again, referring to option A, the EdSpec option, the enhanced EdSpec option. That is significantly less than we shared with you last week. So we're all familiar again from last week's conversation, the spreadsheet that's on the screen that provides a budget analysis, a attempt at a high level to explain to you what has happened from the original budget of 24.5 to the building committee's budget at 35.9. And then again, our efforts over the last month that culminates in a current budget of about 41.8. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to just highlight the major changes in scope. Again, as we promised, trying to explain to you in detail what the scope change is from those earlier estimates to now. But again, pointing out that that scope change value has been reduced significantly since last week because of that cost management effort. Ryan?
So the last time we were here, we came with a number about 1.7 million, and that's changed a little bit. It tends to go up and down as we go through the cost management process, because for every time we remove scope, we've had to add that down to the bottom of the list, as well as identifying all of the increased scope, which makes up the top part of this list. So I'm going to highlight the major items. There are more than what's shown on here, and they get, into the fine details, but I'll just go through the big ones. The first one would be the infill at the lower classrooms and corridors. This would be an ADA compliance item, which we've already reviewed. It joins the most southern classrooms. It also protects against the flooding. This was not originally in the estimate, and I'd like to highlight that as well. This is a comparison against the original estimate. It takes into account the EdSpec, but if it was not included in the original estimate, I've included it here. The next item would be raising the new main entry. This would include raising the main entry, the demo of the stairs, the grading, and the demolition of the floor above. This takes into account everything pertaining to that raising of the new main entry and adjacent corridors. The excavate and import 7 feet of structural fill at the addition was a result of the geotech report, which occurred after the EdSpec. This just requiring us to import 7 feet of structural fill, which resulted in about $100,000. That would be in addition to what would be typical.
Hey, Ryan, can we take a pause for a second there? I see Karen Kowalski has a question. Karen, do you want Ryan to finish, or would you like to jump in now with the question?
If I could jump in now with the question, it'd be great,
Absolutely.
because just going right. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. So my question goes to the raising of the new main entry. So I thought originally we were changing the main entrance to go on the right-hand side of the building where that, I think, the library is at the moment. And we were adding something on which is already at ground level. So my question is, would we need to do that in addition when we already had an entrance at ground level?
So Karen, I'll take a quick stab at answering that. David can
Okay,
improve my answer. Look, we as we were walking through the schematic design, I think the building committee spent a lot of time considering this, and there are a couple key factors. One is in terms of ADA compliance, I think it's viewed more positively to have a secure entrance for all, as opposed to what would effectively become two separate entrances, one for folks who may have disabilities and one for kids who don't. And so I think that was part of the building committee's thought that we discussed with Silver Petroselli. The better way to do it is to focus on doing one entrance, taking the stair out. We've gotten a lot of feedback from the community on that, and actually all of it positive. And you may recall that in Coscob School, that's what was done, exactly what was done for their main entrance when the school burned down. And then the other.
so sorry, James, just to pause you right there. So, and my apologies to the board and all the audience for me being late. I had a work issue to deal with, but I may have missed that then. So you're just going to grade out that to the front entrance because you're not low. You can't really low, it's at the floor level, so you can't really move it down. So I just I happened to come in when I saw the picture, so I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. And I'll let David answer that in a second. The other thing I just wanted to flag is we now have the benefit of a detailed geotechnical survey, which was not understood at the time of the ed specs. And so, I think that the determination has been made given FEMA floodplain that the entrance should be at 14 feet 14 feet as opposed to something else. So there does need to be some work to do to be compliant with FEMA. And so David, or Dean, what would you say to
Yeah, I can probably pile on a little bit, James. It's a few things. ADA clearly does not want and prohibits you from having a separate accessible door for somebody who is disabled and have everybody else use another door. So right off the bat, ADA says your front door should be an accessible door for everybody. And knowing Old Greenwich, how everybody uses the plaza, gathers at the plaza, we were there on many bus drop off and pickup times to watch and observe how the neighborhood school actually functions. It was clear to us, it was clear to me as the project architect that the loggia is not a main entry and it would never be at Old Greenwich. So I walked away with the understanding after I observed how it operated that everybody wants to gather in that front plaza. So understand that ADA says you cannot have two entrances and you cannot discriminate and send somebody who is disabled through a different door. So we would either need to abolish the front door and force everybody to the loggia, or we felt it was best to abolish the loggia and send everybody through the front door. That meant removing the stairs, and not to overcomplicate this, but we actually are raising the plaza because right now it's at just under elevation 13, it's 12 and change. So we actually had to raise the plaza up to elevation 14 to get above that floodplain so that we don't flood the building. So a lot is going on with changing that plaza to meet both the ADA OCR obligation, but also to meet the floodplain civil side solution. So again, we're doing that by raising the plaza. So we're actually entering the building at a higher elevation than the existing finished floor and then ramping down as soon as we get into the building, which is another reason why we wanted to take away the second floor over that lobby, because there would be limited headroom. So a lot goes on in there, but the simple answer is we're raising the plaza over its current elevation by almost 1.5 feet. It'll be up higher than it is today.
And Karen, so we will be entering below the lowest level of the building. So we're not entering at that higher piece. We are entering in essentially at grade. at the center primary.
Okay.
Yes.
The only thing Karen, I would just say at the end is the building committee spent months looking at this. And we challenged Silver Petroselli on this repeatedly. And at the end of the day, the building committee unanimously felt this was the right solution. We did bring it to the 5 different public hearings that we had, public meetings that we had with the community. We floated, hey, what would you think if you take out the front stair and you have the entrance below? And the response, yes, do it. That's a great idea.
Ryan, I'm cognizant that we're an hour into our presentation here, so maybe if you could move us through the rest of this document very expeditiously, and then we can have a discussion.
Thank you, Mike.
The biggest item on this list is the HVAC system. Not that it wasn't included in the ed spec, because it was. About 23,000 square feet was not included in the original estimate. So we priced the 23,000 square feet at approximately $2 million in added cost, and that makes up the majority of this number. Jumping down, communications and PA system, again, it was detailed in the ed spec. The full scope of work was not carried in the original estimate. The same is true for security. It was in the ed spec, and it was not in the estimate at all. So for that, it was about $415,000. For the items that were removed, these can also be found on the summary, our estimate summary as well, in the cost management section, with the exception of the first one, which is reduced gross area. Originally, the addition was supposed to be significantly bigger, and because it's been reduced, we also have to address that when we're comparing, our estimate to the original. So with that, it's about $450,000.
Hey, Ryan, can you pause 1 second, please? Laura, I see your hand up. Do you want to wait till Ryan finishes, or you want to jump in now?
Well, before he moves on from this page, I just wanted to ask, I see the 1.6 million for phasing costs. And I just wondered what was in that number for the phasing, because this is a significant renovation where virtually, there's a lot of building being touched on here. So I just wondered if he could elaborate on what the phasing plan might be for that 1.673 million.
So typically on a project like this, we do utilize historical data, but the scope that it is covering is temporary walls, doors, subcontractor inefficiencies, having to mobilize, demobilize. What we're typically using is a square foot number prior to the in-depth phasing plan, which will be created in conjunction with the staff. But based on our historical data, this is fairly accurate.
So Ryan, just adding for Laura quickly, it's concentrated on separation of students and staff from the construction areas by those partitions, maintenance of existing systems, primarily MEP. As we begin to implement a new system, we have to maintain the existing system in those occupied areas.
So are we utilizing temporary classrooms or trailers or anything like that, or no?
Right now, we don't anticipate that based on the information we've discussed with the principal, Jennifer, that we're going to be able to find swing space classrooms within the building, but also utilizing the 4 new classrooms as swing space when they come online after the addition is completed.
And Laura, the one thing I would just amplify on that regarding the phasing is it's, it's things like we'll take the music room, right, and it will become a swing space, right? It's not obviously on a permanent basis. You can't just get rid of the music room, but on a temporary basis, that will be one of our swing spaces. And Principal Benzavengo is identified for us. I think in addition to the 4 classrooms in the addition, which obviously will be one of the first things that'll go up and will give us 4 classrooms. Downs has said they'd like us to have the ability to have 6 to 8 classrooms to help with the phasing, and we've identified that internal to the building. It's not perfect, but it's definitely cheaper than bringing on modulars and temporary space, et cetera.
And if I could just jump in terms of the balance of the values that you see here for credits, it's our attempt to analyze and make apples to apples, if you will, the original estimate to what we are seeing now as the scope of work of the project. So when we talk about these total costs and where the increase comes from, if we're telling you there's more scope, conversely, we have to show you those credits in the reductions from what has been removed from that original estimate. And then just since I'm on a roll, I'll continue. The hazardous materials we talked about, again, that number came about as it relates to the report that came well after the ed spec was written. The phasing costs we just touched upon. The increased contingency in relation to what we recommend as your construction manager at this level of documentation. And then, of course, as we mentioned last time, the reduction in the soft costs as part of that cost management effort, if you will, that gets you to that 41.9. And then if we just go to the next page, Rye, just at the top, just to paint everyone's picture again here on the information, we've looked at 3 options, but a lot of our effort, the majority of our effort today is concentrating on that option A, but we have 3 total options rather that provide additional levels of renovation throughout the building. Scrolling all the way to the bottom, Ryan, I don't think we want to go through every one of these numbers, but that's where we're trying to now bring in that cost management. We're bringing in the additional cost management again that we've gone through in summarizing the total hard costs, being theoretically our eventual guaranteed maximum price to the town of Greenwich, incorporating the soft cost budget with appropriate contingencies again, getting to that total project cost line of 41.8 as compared to the 24.5 original budget being about almost 17.4 over, and with a estimated state reimbursement, estimated from the perspective that there are some ineligible expenses that are on this project, the total cost to Greenwich would be in the 35.6 range for option A. And just quickly, as James touched upon at the beginning of our conversation tonight, we have established a series of alternates that are perhaps should be entertained or willing to be entertained by the board in the town. Number one, I'll skip past the postponement of 2025. We're going to stay optimistic, and we're going to make this happen in 2024. But the full roof replacement being one of them. We don't have a full roof replacement project as part of option A. Some of these roofs have been relatively recently replaced, less than 15 years, which would be required by OSCGR. We have full window replacement options. We have isolated replacement of windows at the main entrance area if that were desired. And a school request is the window seats in the classroom additions being added back into the project at a relatively small amount compared to a total project cost of about $100,000. And then a full millwork scope that tries to dive into more replacement of millwork especially, and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, and James, in the 1902 building, to be able to provide, some more modern installations of millwork.
Hey,
So
Jeff,
those are-
Jeff, can I
Sure.
put you on hold a second? I see Christina. Is that really you, Christina, or is that somebody impersonating you, has her hand up? And she might want to ask a question. You want me to let Jeff continue?
I did, this actually kind of ties to the alternates that he's talking about. And yes, it is me. I managed to get on. I've been watching for a bit now.
Perfect. Okay, then go ahead, Christina.
So I just, in terms of these alternates, and this kind of goes, I don't know if this is kind of a Dan Watson question or a Tony. These seem like some of these things are things that we do in the regular course of our quote annual maintenance. And while I see I guess the question is, which is worth doing in terms of economy of scale versus not, right? Like window replacement, if there's no economy of scale doing it now, I think those are the kinds of things that'd be helpful as you're sitting here talking about those things, as opposed to things that are just kind of good to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Christina, it's a great question. We did walk through actually this in depth yesterday with Dr. Jones and Dan and Blaze. And one thing I would just flag on the roof replacement, there is some scope included here for roof replacement specifically to the new addition. There's some roofing costs there. There's a roof replacement on the gymnasium and the cafeteria, both of which Silver Petrocelli has said after their in-depth analysis, they've got to get replaced. And then, but there is definitely no scope for the work that Dan Watson did to replace the roofs over the kindergarten on the furthest south side of the building, because those were done 5 years ago. And then the rest of the roof that is included then in that 1.964 figure are roof sections that were done, I believe, about 15 years ago. I think, Silver Petrocelli included that in option C. We wanted to flag it here as an alternate if you wanted to consider it. That would, then mean that all of the roof is replaced except for those kindergarten work the town already did just 5 years ago and would certainly not be eligible for reimbursement.
Great, thank you, James.
Okay, Jeff, continue, I guess.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that really culminates in the conclusion of where we are at our opinion of cost collectively with multiple options for the town and the Board of Ed to consider this evening. I don't think I have anything else to add. James, anything else on your end you think I should highlight?
The one thing I would just maybe, if you would, because I know there will likely be questions about it, but the 17,381,000 over number, right, that Ryan's got his mouse on right now. Can you just characterize that? I mean, I know I have my opinion on where that comes from, but I think for everybody's benefit here with ed specs that were done in, budget created in 2020, I'd love for you to characterize for this board, why is it $17.3 million higher?
Well, I mean, it considerably related to the unprecedented cost escalation that we've dealt with, in the construction market in 2021. There was just, the amount of escalation that we experienced was just something that we couldn't predict collectively as an industry. And even through today, we're still grasping with that a bit in certain areas, although things have leveled off. But I think a good portion of that, beyond the scope things that we've identified, is related to that.
Okay, thank you. And the only thing I would just add is, from the building committee's perspective, just having sat in on a lot of these cost management sessions and design sessions, and maybe, Jackie may have a better way to articulate this, but the building committee, obviously there's not much that we can do about cost escalation. But in terms of scope, we worked really hard to try and find the right trade-offs so that we could ensure that, we're bringing a project that is, within the scope intended in the ed specs, making the building ADA compliant, installing HVAC, fire suppressant systems, secure entryway, those core, the new addition, right? Those core things, but there were specific choices that the building committee made to try and identify savings, like making the new addition smaller than originally intended while still accomplishing the program goals, right? And so we really worked hard to try and find those savings and have things pay for themselves. And at the end of the day, as Ryan explained, there are things that we could not account for because phasing costs were just absent from the ed spec. Hazmat abatement, demo, and replacement was just absent from the ed spec. And then things like covering the additional the full 100% of the building with HVAC. That's that big $2 million number. If you want to know where the increased scope beyond hazmat phasing comes from, it's literally that one item, HVAC, and just finding some of these trade-offs so we can make sure that we're able to properly answer the OCR complaint, and because we're going to have to submit this schematic design to the Department of Education for their concurrence that this is compliant with 2010 ADA standards.
I guess I would like to add something if that's okay. I think that the upgrading of the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing and fire protection systems throughout the building in every room is something that will make the building usable for another 100 years. And that many of the other items that are listed in the alternates, we can add into the project as add or deduct alternates with the drawings, if you so wish. But I think that this, especially the new universal entry and the raising of the ceiling in the basement area, will give new life to the school and maintain the historic feature of Old Greenwich.
Now, Jackie, your comments are always welcome. Can you tell us why you would know these sort of things?
Why? Why do I know these things? Because I have I've worked for 30 years as an architect in Manhattan, and I have a master's of architecture from Harvard, and I worked for Raphael Vignoli Architects, a big commercial firm, as their head of design. So that's how I know a little bit about this, but I also taught historic preservation at Columbia Architecture School for one studio. I'm really a modernist, but I do appreciate new life in old buildings and the character of Greenwich as a whole to maintain its livable quality.
Jackie, I knew some of those things and learned some things now, so thank you about you. That's very good. I just wanted to put it on the record that you're an expert in this field, so thank you.
All right, imposter.
And we should get clone Jackie and put her on every building committee that this town has, because she is truly, been the brains behind this outfit.
Well, Jackie missed some building committee meetings because she was in Tokyo touring some of the buildings she built. So there's that. She's humble in what she's done. Let us open up the building to I think we should probably open to other discussions. I see Laura Costin's hand. Go ahead, Ms. Costin.
I was going to say I'm ready to vote if anyone wants to call the question.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I appreciate
you have that power. Hey, Mike, it's okay. I'll take care of the roll call vote just for formality's sake. I see Christina has her hand up before we call the question. Christina, you want to jump in?
Yes, I don't want to be difficult and I may have missed things. So I just I did not hear the original motion. So I would like to know that.
I'm going to have Michael repeat it because it's a little complicated.
But
it was a long time ago.
Great.
Yes.
But just as a general rule, we're voting on option A. Have we, as a board, determined that we don't want to go forward with option B? I don't know if I missed any discussion on that point.
Christina, let's have Michael reread the vote, and then if you the emotion, and then if you have a question about the motion, whether we have to choose option A, B, or C, then ask it then. Mike, if you could do us a favor and
much appreciated.
Motion.
Yes, you will find the wording familiar though, Christina. The-
Perhaps.
So, so this is, remember, this is the first of 4 proposed motions we're bringing forward. So number 1 here, so approve a request for an additional appropriation for fiscal year 2024 of $39,795,873 for construction funds for the Old Greenwich School renovation project. And ask the Board of Estimate and Taxation to release the conditions on the $1,086,000 in A&E funding in the fiscal year 2024. That confirm that those numbers equate to the 41,881,873 in the option A column.
And
Super helpful.
Kathleen has seconded it. If we can end the sharing so I can make a more accurate account of the voting members. I see Karen Hirsch would like to say something prior.
Oh, wait,
to-
I don't get to finish my question?
So of course you do. I didn't know you had. Go ahead.
No. So we're voting on option A. And then just to a quick point, and again, I don't know if this goes to James or to the administration, just to understand, if we go with option A, just understanding what what are going to be the ongoing maintenance elements of the building, or it really won't be, like, because if we do A versus B, when you talk about the mechanicals, just to understand, this is back to my bang for the buck question, James, Tony, I don't know who the right person is to just kind of give a very brief overview of the benefits of that and what we're looking at on a going forward.
Dr. Jones, you want me to kick it off and then you can speak from the school perspective? So,
Can I just ask, well, could they please elevate Dan just so that if he wants to chime in, he's on the panel?
Yeah, so look, as we said, all of the major systems in the building are we are touching all of the systems. We're not touching all of the spaces, the millwork. We're not replacing the entire roof. We're not replacing all of the windows. Now, our judgment of the building committee, based on the input of our professionals, has been we don't absolutely need to do the roof replacement, the window replacement. They would have told us if we had to. That being said, right, if this building, like all of your buildings, will require ongoing maintenance. So at some point, the town will need to, entertain replacing that section of the roof that we're not touching. And, in 15 years, we'll need to entertain replacing the roofs that Dan did 5 years ago. And in 20 years, we'll need to entertain replacing the roofs on everything we're putting in today, just like you would for all of your buildings. On the windows, similar, I don't know the schedule. Dan can probably articulate that a lot better than I can. I don't think our view is that you need to replace all of the windows today. You have not endorsed a Renovate as New project. We are not touching the building envelope. We are not, taking everything down to the studs. And so, you're not creating the most energy efficient building by doing that, but that's the sort of objective you set forth in the ed specs that we've tried to adhere to. So there will be ongoing maintenance, but I think it should be clear that most of the major systems are in this building are being touched through the installation of new mechanicals throughout the building, the HVAC, the plumbing, the electrical. These are things that are going to be touched and are going to be done by our team.
You good, Christina?
I am. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Karen Hirsch, you're up next, followed by Karen Kowalski.
Mine's more of a process question. We have the motion to approve the funding, but we also need to approve the revised ed specs that go along with whatever funding option, whatever option we go with. The mechanics of that are that we currently have a redlined version, which we can make a motion to partially approve, but we just need the mechanics to approve a clean version so that we can get it to them in time. to go to the state.
We have four motions. One, we have.
Just
one
putting
on
that,
one.
I'm just putting that out there because that should follow
And I
whatever.
do
it is.
appreciate, I think, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the motions you're holding back and waiting to just give us is going to be one of those ed spec adjustment motions. Is that correct?
That's right.
Fantastic. So let's
As
go.
presented, and my understanding is there is precedent in town. The RTM has often approved some red lines and then cleaned it up afterwards. So,
Yeah,
so I think
that's
as
fine,
long
but
as
my
it's as
point is we
presented.
have to have a clean version with our, so that's all.
Karen, I think
Absolutely.
this is out of order, this discussion.
I know, I.
Point of order.
Asking as a process question.
Point of
Fair
order,
enough.
a point of order, where there's accusations, Karen Hershey, you're out of order, so I'm going to go to Karen Kowalski, who we hope is in order.
God help me.
Yeah, I was curious about the ordering myself, but it is what it is. So just for some clarification's sake, and I know Dr. Jones and I exchanged some email correspondence on this, but I'm sorry if I appear to be a little confused on the issue. But if we get this, my understanding, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, if we get this done, we can get this done by the end of June. It would be submitted to the state, and we could move forward, and we could put a shovel in the ground as early as when?
June, next June.
Next June. Okay, so now let's go back. So with respect to the letter that was floating around related to the CMS building and said, 3 people on that said, we don't need to get this done by the end of June and it doesn't slow us down. I'm getting mixed signals here and mixed information. That one is not going to get done before June and submitted. When is the earliest we could put a shovel in the ground with respect to CMS? Laura, maybe you're the right person.
Point
to
of
answer.
order. I don't know if this is also part
Well,
of it.
so
I agree.
but
We're
here's-
discussing the motion and
But here's my point. I'm trying to understand the timing of this, right? Because some people have accused us in emails today of rushing through the process, which I don't think we've rushed through it all, right? So here's the point. In 2021, we went through the full process of what's that called? It's feasibility, right? Because I sat on that committee. So we went through the full feasibility study and all of that, and that took 6-9 months that we went through, and we voted on that. And then we went through and now we're in the current A&E process. So we're not in this phase of trying to push this. We're not pushing this through. But we are trying to meet a deadline, which is this June deadline. And I'm trying to understand, if we miss this June deadline, I'll rephrase my question so I don't bring CMS into this at all.
thank you.
If we miss this June deadline, are we prohibited from continuing our process and from putting a shovel in the ground in June?
Well, I'm gonna try to direct this. I believe when this question was asked before, I believe, David, you were the expert on this. And then also Dr. Jones could follow David on a perspective that she has as her communications with the state. So David, if you could begin, that'd be great.
That is correct. The process is that for priority projects, that you submit by June 30th. Now, there are other projects out there that seek approval through a special legislation process or an emergency action plan. There are other projects that do that. But the protocol, and it is actually the state just issued a memo to all superintendents. The design teams were copied on that. The architects throughout the state, the practice school construction were copied on that, along with the construction managers, that made it clear that priority projects have a June 30th deadline, so they can get on the bonding council. Now, there are other projects, and I'm not familiar with the other ones you're referencing. Those go through a special legislation, but the true protocol is June 30th.
I'm sorry, Karen, just if I may, I have contacted our state delegation some time ago, asking them for some degree of clarification, and it's still a little fuzzy, but go ahead, Karen, please.
So I'm going to try to, I'm not sure what I understand about priority projects, but what I'm saying is, okay, so if it's a priority, if we do not, is it just about getting on the reimbursement calendar or being able to actually put a shovel in the ground?
It's
David?
related to the reimbursement. So the application to get reimbursed through the state, they call it a priority project. Mainly it's a large project. Okay, that's what they mean by a priority project. And to seek reimbursement, to file that application deadline is June 30th every year.
Okay, so nothing is necessarily stopping us from continuing on and actually going forward with the building of the project, subject to getting it funded by the beat, get it funded by moving forward and putting it into the ground. So it doesn't matter that we're on this priority list or not priority list, but we can still move forward with the project if it's funded, and we can start putting a shovel in the ground in June. Is that what I'm hearing?
If I may, Karen, this is exactly what we ran into with the high school entryway.
Yeah, I'm
You
just trying to
cannot go
understand.
out, you cannot go out if you want to get, I mean, like really super simple.
Please.
If you want state reimbursement, you cannot go out to bid until you are approved. In the case of the high school entryway, it's not subject to this June 30th thing. In the case of this project, we would have to wait to see if we're on the bonding list before we could do anything. So if we miss the deadline and we have to wait a year, we then have to wait the additional 6-9 months, whatever it is, to find out if the state approves the project before you can even go out to bid, if you want the state money. If you don't want the state money, you're not subject to any of this.
Okay, and when you mean go out to bid, that's going out to bid
to the contractors, right?
the
Take your
contractor.
construction. Yeah. So you can, so a shovel does not hit the ground.
So
To your
that's what I,
question.
thank you.
I
That's what
I was
wanted
trying to be
know.
helpful and not to
You
interrupt.
are,
but-
and that was my point. My point is the
Okay.
shovel does not hit the ground. Got it. Okay, that's what I
Right,
need.
if we miss June 30th, the shovel doesn't hit the ground if we want state money for at least a year plus.
Gotcha. Okay, we're good. I don't think we need your comment now, Dr. Jones, but thank you for being willing to make that comment. Michael, I believe I saw your hand up. I saw you took it down. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm not seeing any other hands. I would make a quick comment and try to call the question because because I think to Karen and everyone's point here, fundamentally, I think all of us as a board believe strongly that we have to move forward with a project next year. We spent a lot of time as a board talking about CMS. We spent a lot of time talking about Old Greenwich. The passing these motions tonight keeps the options open for the entire community so that we can move forward. And I think that's of crucial importance. The Old Greenwich Building Committee has done an extraordinary job bringing the project to this point. And I think now it's time for us to move it forward.
Seeing no
To keep
more
the options
hands,
open.
I will acknowledge Mike's call to question. Mike, how do you vote?
Yes.
Let's go to Karen Kowalski,
Yes.
Karen Hirsch,
Yes.
Laura Costin,
Yes.
Kathleen Stowe,
Yes.
Christina Downey,
Yes.
Joe Kelly, yes. That's 6. There's somebody else. Who did I leave off?
It's 7.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You are correct. And we have 1 absent.
Did
So we
Michael
have
Joseph
7.
vote? I didn't hear you call him.
Yes.
I did vote. I was yes.
First vote, yes.
Thank you, Michael.
That is 7-0-0. 1 member's absent. Michael, do you have another motion?
I do. Thank you. So the second of 4 here. So approve the educational specifications for the Old Greenwich renovation project dated October 21st, 2021, as revised June 21st, 2023.
Second.
Christina seconding it. Discussion.
Let me read it one more time for those following at home. So approve the educational specifications for the Old Greenwich renovation project dated October 21st, 2021, as revised June 21st, 2023. This is basically approving the ed specs that, the revisions to the ed specs that David walked us through this evening that align to the budget we just passed.
And Christina seconds it. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, let's call for a vote. Michael,
Yes.
we have Karen Kowalski,
Yes.
Karen Hirsch,
Yes.
Laura Costin,
Yes.
Kathleen Stowe,
Yes.
Christina Downey,
Yes.
Joe Kelly's a yes. 7-0-0, one absent. Okay, Mike, do we have another motion?
Yes, so number 3 or 4. So I move to approve the schematic design for the Old Greenwich School renovation project as presented by the Old Greenwich School Building Committee.
Second.
And Christina would like to second that. Do we have any discussion on this topic?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat the motion again one more
Yep.
time, Mike?
So this is to approve the schematic design for the Old
Oh.
Greenwich School renovation project as presented by the Old Greenwich School Building Committee. Again, this is the document that Dean and David walked us through that aligns with the revised ed specs and Downs's budget.
James, I see you raise your hand. You could totally mess up our vote if you say something controversial, but go ahead.
Look, the only thing I wanted to say, in addition to your thanks for the prior 2 motions, is if this is approved, I just wanted to remind you of our obligation to revert within 15 days to the Office for Civil Rights with that. And you have the building committee's full support to make that happen within the next 15 days. Obviously, we have another deadline that was 9 days away. But we'll be happy to work with Dr. Jones and the town attorney to help make sure that happens so that we are compliant with the OCR resolution agreement.
Thank you, James. Karen Kowalski, you're up.
Yeah, the question I have is on the schematic design, right, though, the final design still comes back to the board for further approval, right? So I'm not opposed to the schematic. I caught the tail end of it and I've seen before, and so it looked good to me in general, but why do we need, and Christina, maybe you're the expert here, why do we need to approve the schematic design now? Is that for the ADA purpose? I don't know.
I'm gonna let James run with that one.
Okay.
Go ahead, James.
We will be coming back to you as we go through these different phases to, of course, keep you in the loop. This is the first big milestone schematic design. We'll then move this summer into design development phase, at which point we'll be really getting into the weeds of the design process. We will come back and ask for your approval on that piece, and then following that, we'll be moving into construction documents, which are the really detailed information that contractors need, and we'll be coming back to you then as well. So you're going to have multiple bites at this apple. I think our view is we're going to continue to work this, try and find as many efficiencies as we can. The way the team has explained this to me is, when you did the feasibility study, you were really at a 50,000 foot view. I'm going to start talking about airplanes. As schematic design, we're down at the kind of 25, 30,000 foot view. We'll get into design development. We'll be down into kind of 20,000, 15,000 foot view, and then construction documents. We're pretty close to ground level. We're not entirely ground level because they're good. There will be change orders. We're going to try and do everything we can to I know Jackie is already cracking the whip that, we're going to minimize that, but that's a way to think about it. You're going to have multiple bites at the apple, and we're going to ask for your approval and endorsement as we go.
So James, there's no need for this to be voted on in order to submit to the state for reimbursement, but it does bring your project along. Is that what you're saying?
It is. I think it is required. For state first. Yeah.
If I may think, I'd rather eliminate think from that sentence just in case. Is there anybody who can confirm that this is needed for us to submit to the state for reimbursement?
David or Dean?
Yes, it is required that you approve the schematic plan to move this forward.
Thank you.
And it's also required as part of our contract to move forward. Now, that could be done by others from this group, but yeah, to answer your question, yes, it is required to be approved to move forward.
But not for state reimbursement, just to move forward.
No, for state
No, for
reimbursement.
both.
For state reimbursement as well. Okay,
Correct.
just for clarity's sake, I just wanted to make sure. Sorry, James, with that think thing, I remember someone put.
Okay,
think on it. It was
that's
like-
why we hired our team.
Thank you. All right, Karen, are you finished with your questioning?
I am. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Any further questions? Further questions? Hearing none, let's call for a vote. Karen Kowalski,
Yes.
we have now Michael,
Yes.
we have Karen Hirsch,
Yes.
Laura Costin,
Yes.
Kathleen Stowe,
Yes.
Christina Downey.
Yes.
I also will vote yes. So that's a 7-0-0 vote with one absent. Michael, do you have a fourth and final motion?
I do indeed, and this one will require a little explanation once we get on the table. So I move to direct the Old Greenwich Building Committee to spend up to $100,000 to develop a cost estimate of rebuilding Old Greenwich School.
I'll second.
Karen Kowalski, second. Do we have any discussion on this topic?
Right. So, board members may recall back in March, we already voted, all of us, in favor of directing the Old Greenwich Building Committee to develop a cost estimate under the basically under the spirit of not wanting to make sure all options are being explored, making sure that everybody has, that we've done our due diligence and not impeding the progress of the school moving forward. We have learned from the town attorney that anything because that is outside of the building committee's traditional scope, right? The building committee is charged with building the ed specs. So because this is outside of the building committee's scope, spending any money, anything other than a back of the envelope estimation, but asking our professionals to actually do any kind of analysis, and I suspect the cost will be a lot less than $100,000. But to spend any analysis would require a specific motion from the board allocating funds. So that's kind of why we're bringing this back to the board, even though we already voted in favor of it, to limit any hiccups down the road, and also to make sure that we've dotted all our I's, crossed all our T's, and can move forward.
Thank you, Michael. Karen Kowalski?
Yeah, thank you. So Jamie, you and I had some dialogue back and forth earlier today, but have we done a back of the envelope as to what a new building would cost? And give me just the rough science on how rough the back of the envelope is, and does it kind of turn to the front of the envelope? And exactly how much is that we think that a new build would cost if we were to like rebuild Old Greenwich if we designed the whole thing just as it is and rebuild it, what's it going to cost us?
Yeah, thank you. And the one clarification I would just make is that, and obviously you guys can adjust your own motions as you see fit, and I can't. Is I would hope if you guys were going to entertain this, that should not come out of our the funding you've just proved. I would think that would be in addition to, because we're going to need a fully funded project, and right now that would just be taking from our contingency. So just ask your consideration that there be a separate pot for such an analysis. Karen, to your question, if it's okay, I'm prepared to share a screen of the analysis we have done to date, if people think that would be helpful.
Yes, please.
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that. That would be helpful.
So let me share my screen then. So what you're looking at here is a document that we have walked through with Downs and Morganti, and to try and understand what would a new building cost. You know, I heard it discussed during budget season that, oh, you could build a new school for $40 million. We provided some information to include comps to this board and also to the BET that I think showed that a new school just alone would cost roughly $65 to $70 million. We've taken this a step deeper to try and, you know, I'm ignoring for a second what we have heard from the community, which has been very explicit and direct to us, which is do not tear this school down, just fix it. And I'm also ignoring, you know, some of the public discussions from historic building advocates who would obviously need to be considered at some point, and just focusing on the raw numbers. So let me just quickly walk you through here. If you were to do such an endeavor, you would need to start, it's probably not something that will start next year. It's something that would start a year after that. So July 2025 it would take, based on our advice from our construction manager from Downs, it would take a couple months to abate the school building, take another couple months to demolish the school building. You do some site work to prepare for foundations, and then you really wouldn't start until January of 2026. So you're talking 2.5 years from now. And you would finish roughly the summer of 2027. On this top right here, you'll see these cells in yellow. These are elementary school projects in the state of Connecticut that were on the 2023 priority list. They all have a 2023 or early 2024 start. You'll see the dollars per square foot, on an average basis, $811 a square foot. I know you were provided the other project in $807, which is pretty darn close to that. If you adjust those and you escalate to the timeline I just explained, you're talking roughly, 2.5 years from now. You're talking, dollars per square foot, approaching 900 in excess or below, depending on what you use as escalation. We then went and, using some of the information that we had to sort of say, what is a new building cost? We had the benefit of some of the materials provided by in the context of the central project, but then also tried to apply some of the facts on the ground of what we know about this site and this building. I think one of the key components, in addition to building a new building, you're going to really have to do quite extensive work to bring this site up to the floodplain. You have to raise the entire site. And so we allocated some funding for that. We also allocated some significant funding to abatement and demolition, the abatement in particular. You'll notice that it's not a huge amount higher than the abatement we're doing here. Primarily, I think Jeff could speak to this if anyone has questions on it, primarily because you're not setting containments like you're going to need to be doing in the renovation of Old Greenwich, but it is, it's a meaningful amount of abatement because of what we know about this facility. If you apply then, basic things on contingency, 10%, obviously at renovation, you guys know the standard is 20-ish, 20 plus. New construction, it's 10. We provide a soft cost allowance to, roughly a little bit under 18%, something like that was what the advice from our owner's rep and construction manager recommended and see pretty regularly. You see that you get to an estimate that's, depending on the size of the school, $65 to $70 million just for the school and raising the site and the abatement. The other thing that would just need to be kept in mind is, where do these kids go to school for the 2 years while this is all going on? They have no building. Obviously, there's no identified location. I know you guys have considered this for other projects, but I did do some of the homework in terms of talking to Dr. Jones, and she provided me with some great information over the weekend about the cost of my home school, North Miami School, when we had to send kids to Trinity Catholic for several months. So this is very back of the envelope, right? This is, how much does it cost to rent another location while you're doing this work? How much does it cost to bus kids to that location for 2 years? Of course, I think this could be an underestimate. One, because we don't know exactly a facility that could support it. And second, because you'd be talking about moving 400 kids to that location. So the cost there could actually be in excess. But I just tried to keep it apples to apples. What's a dollar we know for renting an alternate location, and you'll see that you get to a sort of total project cost in the $70 to $80 million range. On a when you factor all that in, and we tried to counterbalance that. You'll see this row in yellow here showing that this is before the rent of an alternate location. You see you're approaching the high 800s, low $900 range. And I'll just point you back up to this top section where, that's really what on an escalation basis, that's really what we think it's likely to be 2 years hence. And, of course, we tried to include, net zero options and things like that. Some state reimbursement at 7%. Just ballpark, as you guys know, new construction starts at 10 and then it's 10% minus, and perhaps some extra reimbursement for net zero. And, you get to the $70 to $80 million range. So with that, I'm certainly happy for questions, but I wanted to show you what we've done. And, I'm thankful certainly to have folks like Downs and Morganti who do these projects and were able to kind of give me some advice and give us some advice and course corrections.
Well, James, that's a heck of a back of an envelope. So thanks for that. Christina was next with a question. Then we'll go to.
No, it was just a comment if he's done.
I'm done.
Yeah, James. Yeah, that is way more back of the envelope, as Joe just said. That's like a serious. I have a couple of thoughts on this. I'm not sure what the basis of the motion is, but be that as it may, I think I have a couple of comments. Number one, to what you said, the community does not want a new school. They want renovation of their existing school. I feel like spending $100,000 is frankly a waste of money. The BET has already gone through the process. They're trying to hire their own estimator. So it's a redundancy at best. And I think the fact of the matter is, I have a lot of credibility in what James was just presenting us. I think we all know it's going to be $30 to $40 million more than the renovation. That's a lot of money. That's not a close call. And frankly, I think that's $30 to $40 million we would want to use towards Central Middle School in the case that, we're challenged for funding on that. So to me, I don't think this is money well spent. We're making a request for money well spent. That's just my personal point of view.
Well, thank you for your personal point of view. And now we'll go off to Karen Hirsch with her personal point of view.
My bad. I didn't mean to have my hand raised, but I would say I pretty much second what Christina has said. The community has been very vocal about this. And I more want to thank James for saving us $100,000 because, right there, value engineering. You did a great job there. So thanks.
Thank you, Karen Hirsch. And Karen Kowalski, your hand is up.
Yeah, so I guess this question goes to Jamie, to you on this. What else would we get from, I agree with Christina and Karen on this, that was more than back of the envelope. What more would we get by spending more money?
You look, what you would need to do, I think, based on the advice I got from the town attorney is we would need to go to a new RFP process. The folks that we have on the call, they responded to an RFP that specifically was aligned with the ed specs as we're mandated to follow. So we would likely need to entertain a different RFP. We would need to hire somebody. We would need somebody to go and really look at, we would of course provide the benefit of the survey work and the things like that. But they would need to go and likely, you saw I provided some different size options there. We would need to go, room by room. identify what the proper size of that school is. You would then, need to sort of, really conceptualize, basically do a feasibility on this. You probably, I would think if you did this, you would probably want to hire a survey firm, given what we know is not a super popular opinion. So, I've heard people challenge that assertion. And, I think you'd want to, if I were you, I would probably want to be sure that, the community either really supports this or doesn't support it before you really, headed in that direction. Probably you'd want them to go and help us find, are there really alternate locations? And, can they be had? How much does that cost? Right. So really to refine the level of detail that we have in here, we tried to lay it out in a pretty logical manner based on what we know about the school. But, I think, I've heard some people say it would help to have, a real stamp of approval from an outside party. I think, honest people can have different opinions on that, but we just wanted to sort of show you that we have done the work, we have consulted with professionals on it, but if you wanted to really have a true credible, number to compare it to, that'll take some work. It would cost some money. And frankly, you may end up with the same result of 70 to 80 million.
Right. So one follow-up question to that, and I guess this is confirmation for whoever can answer that question. I mean, Christina, you had mentioned it, but is it confirmed that the BET is hiring or has hired their own person to come in and value assess what it would cost to put a new school, to build a new school?
I don't believe they have, based on what I have heard so far, I don't believe that independent estimator has yet been hired.
But they put out an RFP for it.
Yes.
I do know that.
I think that's.
Oh, they did. They put out an RFP.
They did.
They put out an RFP for an independent estimator on what it would cost to build OG from scratch.
The one thing I would just, if I could, the one thing I would just flag for you with that process is, my understanding is that person is not to have access to a lot of the detailed due diligence that we have done on the building and the abatement, the survey. They're supposed to just rely on public information. So the, I guess now tweaked ed specs, but they won't have the benefit of talking to us directly. That's my understanding.
Why wouldn't they have the benefit of talking to you directly? Meaning you're just not going to answer their phone call?
I think they were instructed to rely solely on public information.
Interesting. Okay.
We'll work together with the BET and figure out what the best course of action is forward with their evaluators. But James, you made a very good point, because you're the town's biggest supporter on doing a renovation of Old Greenwich School. Is that safe to say?
I think that's what you've charged me to do, and my committee members decided they wanted me to lead the committee.
So a different set of eyes might have different motivations, and you pointed that out in your comment. So the value that could be added by having a separate cost analysis of a new build would be a different set of eyes that is different than the biggest cheerleader for the renovation of Old Greenwich in the town of Greenwich. So, and justifiably you're advocating it for. I'm not saying it in a critical way. I'm saying it in a positive way, because that's why we're moving along at the pace we are. So if there are no further questions, I will call the question here and take a roll call vote.
Can I?
Of course you can. Of course you can.
Thank you, Joe. I understand everybody's hesitancy here. My suggestion, as far as my motivation putting forward the motion, is really, I want to make sure that there are no obstacles to the project, that we've done our due diligence, that there's a professional, like James said, who's very thoughtful analysis. Feasibility would be a much more detailed view that would make sure that there are no roadblocks towards this project moving forward. So I understand it's money. I think it's money well spent, and that we've done our due diligence, because there is a segment of the town that certainly will always have these questions. And we can say with certainty that we've done our due diligence and here's what professionals really said. So that's the reason behind the question, behind the motion.
Thank you, Mike. It's not a very long motion. Can you repeat it again?
Sure.
And then I'm sorry, Karen Kowalski has her hand up.
You want to repeat the motion first? Go ahead.
Yeah, you don't need to repeat the motion. I mean, my comments are, look, I understand it's additional money, and I certainly wouldn't want to challenge, I wouldn't want it to come misunderstood, the work that Jamie has done or the rest of the building committee, because I quite frankly think it's all been outstanding. I've been a firm supporter of Old Greenwich since the very beginning. I sat on the feasibility study 2 years ago. I thought we did a good job then. Obviously, there are additional pieces of information that have come out that through the hard work of this committee has brought to light, and we are now rectifying. I think that's the importance, right? That's the importance of going through all of these phases and why you do this, and having cleaner eyes and more eyes on projects is always a good thing. I agree with Mike in the sense that there is a host of in the community that have brought skepticism to the fact that this going forward, and it should be rebuilt. And if we're going to rebuild it, we should get more value. We can get more value out of a brand new built school than redoing a school. I personally bought an old house and redid it, and I think it's quite charming. And I agree with that approach. But I do think there is some value. Well, I would like it to be far less than $100,000 in basically proving our point, which is proving all of the hard work that you've already done, and doubling down on the fact that we can't get this done for less money, and we can't get it done faster or more efficiently, and can't do it in a way that pleases the Old Greenwich community more than what we've decided to do here. And we keep talking about the Old Greenwich community, but I think we need to talk about the community, the greater Greenwich community, because while that school sits in Old Greenwich, it is a part of the Greenwich community. It is part of the 15 schools for which we oversee. It is just one in the docket of schools that we oversee, and it affects not just Old Greenwich, but all of us and how we want it. And I think there are more people that want the charm of the original building that sits there than just those that go to the school. So while I do think that I would probably rather spend the money on a math interventionist or a reading specialist, which is where I think all money should be spent, I do find a little bit of value in this. I'd like it to be a lot less than 100,000, and maybe they could cheat sheet off of what Jamie has already done painstakingly. But I do appreciate that. And my last point, and I'll stop talking, is I think by doing a small effort, it just doubles down on everything that we have approved tonight in a 7-0 vote. And I would like to not be challenged further and say, yeah, we did the right thing, and we did the right thing from the beginning. And I think that this just adds to that and puts the icing on the cake.
Well, Karen, maybe if we can circle back to you with a possible amended motion before we hear, right after we hear from a couple other members, and then we'll see if that's something you'd want to do. Karen Hirsch, you're up.
You're on mute, Karen.
Just
How to
kidding.
tell her.
No, so the question I had was more, I'm just trying to figure out where this came from, because the request clearly didn't come. I mean, we would have gotten it from the Old Greenwich Building Committee if this is what they wanted, and it didn't come from them. So I'm trying to figure out where this request came from, because I think, the motion that was made in March, James did exactly what was asked in that motion. It was, keeping us updated and providing cost estimates, as well as costs, for possible new construction. It didn't suggest then that we were going to be putting any money towards that. I don't want to take money away from the project, so that would be asking for yet another $100,000 on top of what we've just asked for. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly where this came from, because it does duplicate the work that the BET, they just put out an RFP for. So, shockingly, I'm fiscally responsible here, thinking in those terms, and just thinking to myself, this is duplicating their efforts, and it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense in that regard. So I'm just, where did this request come from?
Michael?
So the request came originally, right, what we said last March. There is some duplication. I think for the reasons James mentioned, I think it is the responsibility of the board and in our best interest to make sure that we have ownership and oversight of an estimation process. The current BET process, we do not have any ownership of. That's independent. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it will make our jobs a lot easier in the long run in defending whatever project we land on with the community, to have an independent estimate and done our due diligence. That's where it comes from.
Well, again, the motion that was made in March did not ask for monetary. It said just
Right. We didn't realize that.
So-
Right. Well, that was where that, right. And we thought we were going to be able to, the understanding in March was that we were going to be able to charge our professionals with helping develop it. And we
I
ran.
don't remember that piece, but my
Well, that
point,
was why that was the thought when asking the Old Greenwich, because they had the building committee to do it, because they had hired, we had hired professionals at this point. But then
well,
we
again,
realized with the legal that we
I
couldn't. do that.
just, I think we should, again, I don't think that this is something that came necessarily from the building committee. I think James did an incredible amount of work, and much like Karen Kowalski, I agree. I'd rather be spending, if we're asking for extra funds, to putting that towards, reducing the achievement gap in other ways than duplicating works being done by another very competent town, body.
Karen Hirsch, we might be going back to Karen Kowalski for a little horse trading on this to make it more palatable, but I want to hear what Laura has to say. I see her hands up.
My computer is going to die, so I'd like to call a question because it's clear that this motion did not come from the building committee. So I'd like to call the question.
Well, I think, I thank you for that, but I think the slightly further discussion, bringing it back to Karen Kowalski, who I believe might or might not have an intention on changing the motion or slightly to a maybe lesser number. Is that something that you had in mind, Karen?
I think, I don't know if there's an opportunity for a lesser number. I'd have to defer to Michael on that, but I don't know how low we can go or whether or not it's worth reducing, because I think if we can reduce it to something in the likes of, to $50,000 to get something like that done, that's certainly more palatable, but I don't know if the work that we'd be asking to get done can get done for $50,000.
Well, I believe the BET allocated $15,000 for their cost analysis on both the cost of the renovations in addition to the cost of the rebuild. So I think maybe 100 might be on the high side, but it's all depending on how much you need to justify your argument.
Well, right, and I would suggest that the two things. One, that the motion reads up to 100, but at the same time, I think that the additional cost is the difference in that cost is to make sure that the analysis is thorough and includes things like the survey and stuff that we need to get a real number.
Well, Michael, if I may, I do believe this motion has a chance of failing at the price point that you put forward.
It does sound like it.
Is there possibly can you withdraw your motion and possibly give something that could be more palatable to the rest of our board colleagues?
I will withdraw the motion. I don't know the sense of the room. If there is any suggestion, I'm happy to make a motion at a lower price point if we think it's worth it.
I think it's worth it myself personally. And Kathleen, we haven't heard from her. Did you put your hand up, Kathleen?
I did. Honestly, Michael, I don't think it's worth it. My 2 cents. I think that it's, I think first of all, James' analysis was incredible. And we all know James' background. So I'm pretty confident that when he looks up comps and does a comparable analysis, it's a pretty darn good one. Those were schools that were in the area they, you know, it was nearly double in some cases, the price that we're talking about. We know what the community wants. And so I really do think we would just be wasting our time and our money at any point. So I'm a no kind of at whatever price it is.
All right.
So Mike, I would suggest trying to float out at 25 at the sense of compromise. And because I think we need it personally. And so maybe make that motion and we'll just call that and make it, if it fails, it fails. If it passes, it passes.
I am happy to make a motion to direct the OG Building Committee to spend up to $25,000 to develop a cost estimate of rebuilding Old Greenwich School.
I will second that motion. Any discussion? I see James has his hand up there. It's waving. I see he's excited to talk.
Can I just, I would only ask for two thoughts. One is, can we clarify that you're not directing us to spend any of the funds you just focus on? I think my gut is it should be separate money from our project.
James, I appreciate that. I believe you made yourself crystal clear last time when you said that, so I'm sure we're okay with that. And,
just want to clarify that. And the other thing I would just say is, look, if you wanted to do this properly, as Mike said, right, you're going to want to go really in depth. And so I'm not sure how much you're going to get for $25,000 in terms of, determining school size, determining, all of these other components that we walked through.
No, thank you, James, but it is board members' time to talk.
I know. I just
jump over to Kathleen. Kathleen, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to understand, just one more question, James, to you, since you're the head of the building committee. This was not something that came out of the building committee? Is that just?
No. I can clarify. Yeah, I apologize if that was interpreted as that way. I never meant to present it. I heard Laura's point. I never meant to present it that way. This is not coming from the building committee. Okay. This is a revision of the March motion.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, I'll call the question. Mike, let's see. Let's start with. Hold on. Let me get myself up here. Kathleen.
No.
Next is Mike.
Yes.
Karen Kowalski.
Yes.
Karen Hirsch.
No.
Laura.
No.
Christina.
No.
And I am a yes. So that motion fails. 3 yes, 4 no, and 1 absent. So I will conclude, unless someone has something else to say. I'd like to really thank everyone especially the volunteers. Thank you, the non-volunteers. Oh, there's hands going up, so I'm going to save my conclusion for a couple more comments. So Kathleen.
Actually, go ahead, Karen. I thought you were, go ahead. You can go ahead of me.
Oh, I was going to let Joe conclude. I just wanted to say we have some housekeeping for setting up another meeting prior to logging off tonight since we're here. So, but you should conclude on this and then we can get to housekeeping after.
I'm not sure it's appropriate for agenda planning for a special meeting. I think that we couldn't do that. We'll still have to resort to.
We can discuss the date since we're all here.
And I've done that for Central during the summer when we did special meetings because
Okay, Christina told me otherwise, but okay, I'll go by you, Kathleen. So I'll go with that. But let's thank all our building committee volunteers. Thank you very much for all the effort you've put in. I believe it's 52 meetings that you've attended so far and countless other discussions amongst yourselves, time spent with professionals. Thank you also to the professionals for being able to make these short notice meetings. And we're optimistic that Old Greenwich will be renovated and will be a great place, a better place for our kids to go to school. We have the best teachers, best administrators, and best everything else. We might as well have the best goddamn building, right?
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. And we appreciate your time, and on to the BET on Friday.
Thank you. And I guess all board members, please hang out. Everyone else, see you later. Thank you.
Joe, I'm assuming that this is still part of the meeting, right? This discussion?
Well, we have to. can we have an
You
adjourn?
can't exit this meeting and then have a discussion because
We
that would
cannot,
be.
so we have to have agenda planning because Kathleen says it's okay, so I'm supporting
our
Kathleen on that.
It's not agenda planning, it's just
Next meeting. Okay.
setting
Uh,
a date for a meeting.
I don't know when Cody's available, but we can check with, I am available. So you just tell me when, who is not available.
Is the question, well, oh, sorry, Kathleen, I was just gonna say, does this have to be in person or can it be a hybrid approach?
Either one. There's some preference to it in person and there's some preference to hybrid.
So I'm traveling Monday through Wednesday next week, so I can, but I can make myself available in the evenings. I just have to be hybrid. I'm remote.
It's fine, right? I mean, I think we should, it's the summer, right? So we've done that before. So,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, some of us can be there, like you said, Karen, right? And some not. So, yeah.
And I'm not making myself available. I'm just saying I can do the evenings and I can do it. I can do the evenings any week night next week except for Thursday. I just need to be remote on Monday through Wednesday.
Monday night looks good for me. Does anyone
It
else?
is good for me. Monday night.
I can do Monday.
Put your hand up for Monday night. Who's good for Monday night? Hands up, lots of,
I'm
okay.
putting my hand up. You can't see it.
Oh, okay, okay. Do we have?
I'm
a
doing
suggestion?
dance hands.
It's, okay, so we have the day narrowed down. I still have to check with Cody, so it's subject to Cody. And now do we have a time someone would like to put forward?
Can we do
The way
7?
She said the evening is better for her.
Yeah, are we okay with our usual 7?
7?
I'm flexible, whatever. Yeah, if you're traveling, if it
7?
works better, that's fine.
Yeah,
Okay,
I have a
so
meeting
all-
that ends at 6, so I'm good from 6 on. So,
Hands up for 7, hands up for 7 o'clock Monday. All right, now I'll check with Cody, and I'll confirm with everyone directly, whether Cody is okay for 7 o'clock Monday. If not, we're back to the drawing board. But I thank you for this evening. It was, as usual, a pleasure working with all you guys. Laura, do you have a motion?
Before Laura's motion, Joe, if it's going to be Monday, it has to be posted Friday. So I'm going to need a full agenda by Friday to post.
Okay, you got it, Mike. Always
Thank you.
efficient.
Just a quick question, Mike, on that, or do we need to have, Karen, we have to certify our minutes about the the ed specs, and do they need a certified minutes about our approval of the ed specs? Is it one of those that we have to approve the minutes from tonight for that? I think just, that's what, so that has to, so yeah,
Right.
that was the other thing.
Mike?
If we could just get confirmation on that, just to be sure it doesn't slip through the cracks.
Yes, we have to have our minutes and they have to be approved in order to have that, because it's, again, when we send the revised ed specs, that has to go with the minutes, the approved minutes, correct?
Right, yeah.
I'm
exactly.
asking
That's
Mike
what I was
Antonazio,
remembering.
because we've gone through this before, right?
Well, it's
Yeah.
a state reimbursement question,
My
really.
computer's dying, so if I'm vaporized, I just want to tell you it's not because
Who
I.
will make the adjournment motion if you go away?
make-
No.
I make a motion to adjourn.
If we have a question on the table, hold on. You're asking about the ed specs being approved. We're gonna do
We have
that.
to approve the minutes next week.
The minutes for the ed specs, and then we saw it was challenging having that other company redo the ed specs. Does KG&D redo our ed specs for, and do we have to?
No, S&P did it.
They did it.
It's done.
It was a
James said he already
We're
has.
done. Okay, we
something
voted
that's
on
clean.
complete and finished ed specs. Mike, how efficient that is. That's cool. Well done. All right, then Laura.
Tony gets some of the credit there.
Excellent. Laura, type your motion.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that. All in favor, we've got to do the roll call. Karen Hirsch, Joe Kelly, Karen Kowalski,
Yes.
Kathleen Stowe, Michael, Laura, and Christina.
Oh, yeah.
Hey.
Unanimous. Very good.
Thanks,
Okay,
everybody.
Thanks, everybody. See you
Thanks,
later.
guys.
Thank you.